Hello.
Hey, Adam. Slowly trying to let folks in.
Only let in the nice ones.
Okay.
I said only the nice ones. Never mind. Okay,
I'm with you in spirit, but on the phone, so I'll join you in a moment.
no problem. No problem.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Yeah, happy Friday. Happy that it is Friday.
It's Friday the 13th.
I was born on Friday the 13th. It's a good day.
Today's my birthday too. Happy birthday.
Well, it's not my birthday today. I was born on Friday the 13th, but happy birthday. I guess that means we're the same age.
Absolutely. I'm 60. How about you?
I'm sorry?
I'm 60. How about you?
I'm 8 years older than you are. And don't look nearly my age.
I think you look great for 68. I'm really not 60. I tell everybody I'm older than I am because I don't understand why you would tell people you're younger. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I'm not 68.
Perfect.
But I can say I got my Medicare card this week. So
Yay, Daniel.
I know how old I am. Man,
This-
you know what it's going to cost me? It's going to cost me $397 a month, less than $5,000 a year for complete health care. That's brilliant. How they do that. And the websites work really well as well. I really am impressed with the process through the Medicare.gov site. They're doing a really good job.
Maybe you should suggest the rest of us have access to that.
I think it would be a great way. Move it down to you all who are in your 50s. Buy in. We'll spread the risk.
Is that part of the 3 trillion plus plan is to lower it, right? To like 50 or something?
No idea.
Yeah, I think it is. So I was reminded when we just had this conversation of The Princess Bride. Well, I'm not really left-handed either.
That was like classic movie. Yeah, I made both my kids watch that movie because I felt like they're just not a complete person if you've never seen The Princess Bride.
I'm with you all the way. It's my fave.
I made them watch Monty Python and they both looked at me like I was crazy the whole time. I'm like, these are things you have to see if you want to live in this house. Sorry.
But you know, Princess Bride is nearly universal, right? I mean, it's just magic to me.
Just hysterical. He's not fully dead. He's only nearly dead.
Yeah, one great one after the other.
Well, good things come around again. I've just been exposed to young people in their 30s. A turntable showed up at my house the other day.
Yeah.
Turntable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A new turntable.
My
It's a
daughter's
thing.
got a serious vinyl collection. She's
It's
got all the old, I mean, she's 16 and she's got Aerosmith, some of the original Aerosmith. She's got AC/DC on vinyl. You name it. It is definitely coming back around.
I think it has been for
We
some
did
time.
something right.
Yeah. Both my kids listen to good music. That was also a prerequisite of living in this household.
And you let them know that they get kicked out if they did not, right?
Yeah, precisely. We went on a cruise to Bermuda and they had it was an 80s deck party one night. And we went out and my children were the only people under the age of 40 that were there. And they knew the words to every song. I cannot tell you how many people walked up to us going, "Oh my God, your kids are awesome." Because they knew all the words to the songs. Fun stuff.
That's great. All right, Amanda, are there any people on the list of would-be attendees who aren't here yet? Anyone we should wait for?
No, I think we're good to go ahead and start.
That's great. That's great. So Daniel, do you, anything from on high, or should I get started?
Well, then, let me just get 2 minutes. I just got off
Yeah.
of a gravity call, where they're thinking about their vision and mission and goals and objectives, and it's very much in sync with what we are doing here in the NIC and in Unify, and clearly in this work in particular, which is they're trying to figure out what their scope is and what their scope isn't, and which is really good because everybody's asking them to be everything. And so it was a very vibrant conversation around, what are the limitations, where do the standards go, how far do they go within healthcare space, and them recognizing that, my voice has been our squeaky wheel has been, don't forget about education, don't forget about justice, don't forget about other places that have standards, and you got to figure out how to connect to them in order to do all this work. And so I think that kind of a conversation is very relevant, and in particular, it's relevant given the conversations we've had with the Office National Coordinator and Sam Meckler as well, who was on that call and who was on the ONC call the other day that I reviewed. I think there's a growing awareness that there's this role for, in order to be successful, you need the codes, right? You need to be able to exchange information, but that has to go across, sort of fault lines. And you got to do that effectively. And I think that is a role that we may be able to help do in a way through this particular scope of it, this piece of around consent and creating a utility that addresses some of the really complicated issues here. And so all I wanted to say, it's a very timely conversation. Things are roiling about in terms of how to actually, use the stuff, right? It's not only creating it, defining where you're going to go with it, but then actually applying it and using it, and then getting it funded to do the work the way we need to get it done. So anyway, with that as sort of a backdrop, there's a poignancy to this conversation. There's an immediacy to it. The last point is, which helps connect the dots. So we're doing this consent. We're able to support this piece of work with a small grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, particularly enabled by Hillary Heichman. So Carolyn Fichtenberg from the UCSF Siren Project, who sort of incubated Gravity last 3-4 years, and I was part of that original group, has now stepped away. They're no longer going to be the co-leads of that, and she's resigning from the executive committee. Taking her place as a executive member, and they've got a very sort of robust governance process, is Hillary Heichman from Robert Wood Johnson. So her voice around informing where theoretically resources go. I mean, I'm sure RWJ is going to be bringing resources to the table, as also a voice in that is very poignant as well. And so this report, this scan, is going to her and the RWJ, next month to help define where they're going to be investing their future resources under the recent strategic plan they just finished, which I also participated in. So this is actually a unique, valuable piece of work that can sort of provide a perspective on how to connect the dots to get somewhere real. And I don't think there's anything more real than, or as real as addressing the issues of consent, which we've talked about as, in a way, the Holy Grail, right? Or a lot of the Holy Grail. I want to get back to the Monty Python analogies, right? And we're not dead yet, so maybe we've got one more shot at it, because I don't see any too young faces on this call, so maybe we can pull it together and actually pull one out for the Gipper, as it were. Right,
before we all fade away.
Back to you. Yes, exactly. Let's do something real, and we've got such great places to do it, and we can really do this thing, right?
What's a Gipper?
What?
One thing that comes to mind as you say that, Daniel, is that the opportunity we have is significant, not only because of the information we can pull together for people, but if you look at the entirety of our group, and if you look at NIC and, you know, the networks that everybody here has, we can really get this out into the world. I mean, producing the report will be a feat and helpful and useful, but I think we can actually get people to take a look at it and maybe move the needle.
That's a great point. Just one other thing I want to add. Stop me if I've already said this, but you know, Sam Meckler, who is really kind of one of the front-facing voices of ONC into the various communities. For those of you who have interacted with her, she's a Fed that's engaged, and she's been enabled to engage in a way that many Feds won't actually say anything. So I've been noticing over the last year or so, she's becoming really more vocal, and as is in this EC committee with Gravity. She just sent me before 10 references of what ONC is doing around consent and privacy. So part of our conversation was for her to say, look, we want you to, you know, we like this idea of a scan, but if you point to these other things, that enhances your sort of comprehensive view of what's going on. And here are the things that we're doing around consent at ONC, which she just sent to me in 2 different emails. So there's a lot of content. There's about 15 different document initiatives. Most of them look like they're health IT kind of related, right? Most of them, but there may be some places that they've got social determinants factored into it, or they're starting to address it. So to your point, Adam, they will be one last piece I'll mention. So they are, and to Paul's excellent encouragement and direction the other day was to say, endorse our work, you know, fund it if you could, but just, you know, support it, because that brings the and you know the federal government to it, and that creates a huge distribution dissemination channel. Last point I'll just add, Brian and I were on a call which you couldn't get into, Adam, which was a planning committee for the ONC as a tech forum in September, right? Following, I think, Christine, is it on the last day of the San Diego conference on the 10th or something?
It's actually yeah, it is. It's the last day of the San Diego conference, which is why I thought they had given you 2 dates and I was trying to steer you to the other date.
They're both dates. They've divided the
Oh,
dates.
it's redundant. Is it redundant?
I don't know if it may be redundant. It may be redundant. That's a possibility.
If it's redundant, that's fine. I just didn't want you to not have the people who might be tuned into San Diego miss it if it was you had a choice of dates.
We don't. They've asked us. They've given us a platform along with 14 other presenters they've created. They're using a virtual conference technology that looks like the next. You know, ONC does this stuff pretty well.
I hope so.
You know, they've actually, out of my experiences, they've been able to. Anyways, it's the next generation. So they're providing us a booth, basically a virtual booth, along with 13 other folks. And actually, Brian, you can send that to send it to everybody. Who's else is going to be on it? PP2PI is going to be on it. A direct is on it, and there's a couple other folks. Who else, Brian? Anyway,
hang on. You're asking me to actually pull up my own email.
Yeah. Anyways, the reason I mentioned it is because we have a national forum over these 2 days. And she said, the person we were talking with, she said there's 3,000 people who come to this from across the country. So we get to actually, and Paul was on the call as well, right? So we get to formulate our messaging, have a virtual booth, provide downloadable stuff, real-time demos, lecturettes, presentations. We've got 2 sections we can fully participate in. And interoperate with our other partners.
When is that again?
September
sometime.
And all I can say, I do now have that list in front of me, but for the most part, it is lists of folks that have something to demonstrate. That's a couple of MITRE demonstrations, some IHE demonstrations, a 360X demonstration, a PP2PI demonstration, a few HHS COVID demonstrations. So these aren't folks that are exhibiting for specific proprietary vendor interests or anything like that, with a possible exception of Lumetic, but
And MITRE.
well, you know,
But
yeah,
But
MITRE
MITRE couldn't be, but,
MITRE isn't allowed to be a for-profit vendor, so,
right.
but in any case,
They,
so
they did get several $1 billion to
Yeah.
do their work.
I was
in
going to
one
say, they do
RFP.
very well for a not-for-profit.
there's something to aspire to for the Stewards of Change Institute.
I'm looking forward to those 75% margins too.
All right. So I think we should, Daniel, we ready
No,
to?
I want to just put the context there because, you know, I think everybody understands that, right? And that's why you're here and that's why other people are really sort of joining it. It's just an amazing opportunity and things keep colliding into making it valuable and being able to disseminate it. So, you know, if we can articulate, we don't have to do the whole world, but if we can articulate it, it's a moment in time, you know, it's following the NAA. We said we were going to do that. We spent 6 months doing it. This is almost a check-in, right? This is the same community that's been working for over a year, almost 2 years, more than that, who are making progress in a very open way, in a very sort of timely manner. So this is, I just want to make sure we understand that broader context of it and the potential reverberations throughout the administration. And think of it, even if they negotiate $2 trillion of safety net investments, I'll take 2, right? 3 would be better. So there's going to be money that's flowing over the next years and years and years, right, out to communities. However, it flows down through the federal apparatus and into the communities. They'll be the lubricant to actually do this work. Maybe even a little better than they usually do, right? Maybe it'll be a little more efficient than how they can use those dollars. So anyway, enough. We have some real work to do. So Adam, take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. So following up on what Daniel said, yes, I think we all agree this is important work and now we need to get it done. So this will be a working session today. And we are getting, I'll start by saying something that we will encapsulate in an email after this meeting. Our ACE project director, Amanda, will send out an email encapsulating some of this for not just to remind all of us, but mainly to reach out and make sure it's heard by everybody who didn't make it today. Because we are getting to a near writing point. You know, I've got just about enough content to start writing, but there's a big caveat to that. And that is that we assembled all of you because I'm not the expert, subject matter expert. You guys are. I can put together what you provide to us. I can make it, you know, a cogent voice and do the editing, but we really need your input. I mean, there's no 2 ways around it. You guys have the expertise that needs to get reflected in the document that we're putting together and going to put out into the world. Thank you to those of you who've done some inputting and given us interviews. All that's really important. But now we're getting to a time where the content has to come together so that we can write it and produce it by the middle of next month. We've even, you know, we have the designer ready to go. I talked to her today, Daniel. So we are at that stage. So we will ask you, I'm going to suggest some deadlines. They're not hard and fast, but please, that doesn't mean they should slip and slip and slip. I just want to be respectful that people have lives to live and jobs to do. The last thing I'll say in that regard, and it's part of the deadline thinking, is, and I want you all to feel really sorry for me and step up to bat because you feel bad for me. I'm getting my left shoulder replaced on September 9th. And if it's possible, I would like to be done by then. If it's not, we're okay. But it would sure be a mitzvah for those of you who know that word, if we can pull it off. So with that in mind, what I'm going to, again, this will be in an email, but we're asking if you can do the bulk, not all. This will be an ongoing process. You can add any time, but if people can get the bulk of their input in by the end of next week, that would be great. I'll be writing starting the middle of the week, so hopefully more content will have come by then as well. But to the extent that you can and cut out an hour or two, it would be marvelous if you can pull that off, and then keep it coming the week after that. But I will be writing in earnest and putting it together. I'm sure coming back with questions, etc. But if that's possible, it would be greatly appreciated. So if you could get that on your calendars. Any questions, concerns, thoughts about that timetable? Again, it's not hard and fast, and you got to do what you got to do, but it would be useful. Does that sound sane, reasonable, crazy? Daniel?
Yeah, they're all here, Adam.
Oh, I thought you were waving your hand to.
No, I was
you want
giving
to
a
speak.
hands up. They're all here.
Okay.
They're waiting for further instruction.
Missed that. Okay, so with that, we're going to go
wait.
into.
Way
What?
to milk it. I mean, Godspeed, and I hope you have a great recovery.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And also all those poor children. No, never mind. So Amanda, if you would open up the document, we're going to try to make this a working session. The way that we're going to do it, because you all have different expertise, and we don't want anybody checking out because we're not talking about something that's in your wheelhouse. So we're going to sort of go through this and go through a few sections, both to start to get some content from you all and to give you some instruction for prospective writing that you want to do. And it is important to say that please think of it as writing. Feel absolutely free to do a little subheadline, the reasons legal restrictions are needed, and make that your section and keep going. That'll be very helpful. We can always change them. All right. Does everybody see the document all right?
Mhm.
All right. So the first place I'm going to go, and absolutely anybody can reach out to me and say, what do you mean by subheadlines? How do I turn this? I want to talk about X. How do I do? I've been an editor for a real long time, so I'm happy to work with anyone if you want or need some, partnership on doing your contribution. So would you scroll through from the top so we have some context of what this looks like for people who haven't looked at it in a while.
Can you give us some, maybe by getting rid of some of the,
yeah, can you show it's a clean copy?
You know what, Adam, you know what we should do? Here's a better way. I think I forgot.
Go right ahead.
Amanda, if you put the link to this document in and everybody opens their own document.
Yes, I dropped it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
She already did that, yeah.
Okay, so you can just, you can walk through it, or maybe we just give people a few minutes to go through it themselves, and after you do an explanation.
Sure. Everybody take a look for a few minutes. What you'll see is that I've structured it so there's an executive summary. Do not, and it says don't type into that. That's what I will cut and paste and rewrite into. I'm going to try to keep it to a couple pages because that's all a lot of people are going to read. And then, so if you scroll down, everybody on their own or with me, keep going. This is all. Can you show this without tracks, Amanda?
That's what I'm not sure how to do on Google Docs without being able to go back to see the changes later. Does anyone else know how to do that?
If not, that's okay. So
actually, the way you would do that in Word, Amanda, would be to, I don't know how it works on Google Docs, but there should be something under review or view that allows you to choose no markup.
Yeah, there is. If you go, there should be a drop down where it says edit on your desktop or something like that. All right, I don't want to waste the time here.
Yeah.
So what you'll see as you go through it, and however you go through it, is that we've cut and pasted interview. It highlights from people's from the people who we interviewed. So and Amanda's put them roughly where we think they belong, but it gives you an opportunity to see what people said, the people we interviewed. And it gives people we interviewed an opportunity to see if we captured the highlights of what they wanted to impart. So, and I think that's important. So that's all here. Keep scrolling, and you should feel free to provide input anywhere you want. Okay, now specifically today, we're going to start here. I changed key, this was key findings, which is sort of standard procedure, and thought about it a bit and realized it's not just key findings, because that implies that that's the findings from the scan. But in addition to the scan, we have interviews, we have a bunch of experts, yourselves included. And so it's really key learning. It's the learning that we're projecting, that we're going to aggregate and give to the world here. So that's the first place where I would love to, yeah, can folks mute if you're not talking? That would be great. So this is the first place I would like to get input from the group for, say, 10 minutes or so. We're going to do just a few sections here to get getting gear, get this thing moving. And so the key learning, and the reason that we can do that, even though you're not necessarily participating in the scan, is because you know stuff that the readers of this report should know. You do. What is the key learning? Again, not the findings, but what's the key learning that people should know relative to consent in your own areas of consent that you want to leave the world with, that you want people to learn from? So you can look at what's already there. It's pretty much dummy type to get people started. But if we can brainstorm for 10 minutes on what is the learning, what do we want readers of this report to know?
So Adam, in reading this first pink thing, it says, this scan demonstrated the need for ongoing investment in tracking or investment in tracking privacy technologies. I'm not sure what the—
I don't know I don't think that's my writing, so I don't know. And again, it's not real type yet, so I wouldn't worry too much about the wording, though obviously let's fix it if it's not clear or wrong.
Isn't it an investment in privacy and consent technologies? I'm just not quite sure what where the tracking.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay.
I don't know either.
So that's a good comment to put right in the document.
Yeah.
What's nice about this is you can just type that in as a comment.
If I were working on two screens, I would.
No, if you open, that's why I said if you open up your own document, doesn't it work that way? I think we did that the other day.
It does. If you're working on two screens, it works great.
All right, Amanda, if you could just type that in, that'd be great.
Did you just want me to add that in as a comment, or?
I'm just trying to figure out, is it an investment in tracking, or is it an investment in privacy and consent technologies, investment in processes, but it is sort of tracking processes, rules, and regulations. That's why I'm confused, actually, by the whole thing. So.
Yeah, I don't know what it's supposed to mean. Anybody? I mean, you can, for now, Amanda, you can, yeah, just leave it as a question that we need to address.
Or why don't you turn it into the statement? Christine, I think you have an opinion on that, right? In terms of what it should be?
Oh, then
so why don't just make the statement in terms of what you think it should be?
Christine, something like tracking implementation of.
Yeah, it could be implementation of privacy and consent technologies, processes and rules and regulations. Again, I'm trying to parse the sentence because yeah.
So let's just make it up. Right.
The word tracking might not be the best word there, because
or just get rid of tracking. Yeah.
In this sentence, it means keeping informed of the advancements in technology and the changes in rules and regulations. It's more of being informed on an ongoing basis, maintaining a database, whatever it is, continually evaluating.
Now, Ed, if I may, this we don't need to do it right now, but this is what you just said is exactly what we're looking for. If you could go into the document and just type the paragraph as you think it should be, if it needs a few more sentences in order to explain what we're saying, and it probably does, write that too, and then other people can add to that. That's the beauty, the value of doing it this way, is that we can do it cumulatively and not just individually. So please, everyone do that, not necessarily in this call, for any part of this. And we would love to have whole sections written from you. That would be ideal, because that means the experts' voices are really there.
I acknowledge what you just said, and I will do that, offline.
Thank you. All right, so anybody, again, you can comment on what is there, which is not really, final in any way. Or does anybody have some key learning points that they would like, that they think should be in this document? What are the things you think the world should know about consent, related to consent?
Universally recognized as an issue.
Can you type, Paul, or no? Or you need Amanda to do that? And if, again, in your own time, if you could then fill that out with a few more sentences, why that's the case, where that's the case, what the impact might be if we actually did something good here. It's not just, so it's not just recognition, but it's implementation. Anybody else? So what do you know that you think the world should know about, related to the topic of this paper? What have you learned in your work?
This is Ed, but in just scanning the document, I realized, partially from comments from Dan Chavez, about the regionalization of consent there. And I'm not sure that there's a consensus yet on, are we looking for a nationwide solution or statewide solution or a regional solution? Are we looking for a way to arbitrate among overlapping geographical solutions? I don't know. But anyway, that seems to be a part of.
But that's an important point, right? That those options exist.
Right.
And again, that could be Dan, that could be you, Ed, could be anybody. Give us a few paragraphs on what those issues are, why it's important, what roads we could travel to get. We won't know everything. This is not the end all paper, and everybody, and it is not a roadmap. This is informational. So 3-4 paragraphs explaining that would be great.
That's me typing in something.
Yeah, just type in, yeah, right. There you go.
And I think, so everyone knows, Chris and her co-team leader on the legal issues team have put together a spreadsheet with legal issues, and hopefully this week they'll be turning, and which we might well use as an appendix, but it needs to be turned into prose. And hopefully this week, between the two of them, they'll be making the legal section of this more robust. While that's being typed, anybody else relating to things that we think the world should know, key learning? I'll take that as a unanimous, we'll get back to you. But so I'll just say again, get back to this, please, during the week. We want to capture your best thoughts and not just what we think that should be here.
I think you can add a comment about there being sort of, maybe Paul said it already, with sort of universal recognition. I mean, I don't think you can talk to anybody that doesn't recognize the need to do it. So it just, yeah, maybe that's it.
With that said, what Ed said, it doesn't mitigate it, but it shows that it's a nuanced argument, right? Everybody agrees that there should be something good. Not everybody agrees what form it should take. well, not, it should be ubiquitous, but what form it should take. Is it regional? Is it national? Is it different in different circumstances? What do we mean? And we should acknowledge that discussion, that there isn't necessarily a consensus.
Well, but is there, are we certain there's consensus that from the vantage point of both the system and the client, improved mechanisms of consent are desirable?
Yeah, I think I think most people agree on that one.
Then that premise needs to be as explicit as possible. The consensus that the client and the system, which are obviously different, can both benefit from improved consent and consent that leads to a flow of information across agency boundaries. Because I don't think there's anything like consensus from the client perspective. And we deal with that in the next bullet and then in the next section. But I think to start out with an unspoken premise that consent leading to information sharing is invariably good and desirable for both the system and the client is just not where everybody is.
Feel absolutely free to type that in during the week, Sid. Sid has already given us some good content. Please feel free to keep going. The other reason for you guys to do it is so it's said in the way that you think it should be said, and not just capturing the thought.
So I'm a little concerned when we're writing this about healthcare, because we're feeding into people's overinterpretation of HIPAA. And, is that true? Are we just giving up and saying people don't understand HIPAA, so we're going to put this consent mechanism in place so that they don't have to think about it anymore? Or are we saying where HIPAA ends, we need to put consent systems in place because HIPAA already actually encourages the sharing of information with the TPO relationship.
So
but
you
people
want
don't do it.
So you're going to type. So you're going to write a couple paragraphs on that this week.
Well, I put a comment in to sort of ask, because again, I don't understand the intent of what other people are writing, but yeah. So.
I think, Christine, gang, one of the things that I think is really important about the consent vis-a-vis HIPAA is that in this complex world we live in with an opiate crisis, we need to be able to have access to sharing the behavioral health and substance use disorder data, which can't be done in most jurisdictions without consent. I mean, certainly federally, the substance use stuff can't be. And so obtaining the consent above and beyond what HIPAA allows, if you do it universally, you avoid any stigma and you really are almost taking a much more health equity approach to.
And that, okay, thank you. I think that's a really nice way of framing this. So it's not so much that we're giving up on people understanding.
Right.
It's that
we're extending
from a health
beyond.
equity standpoint, it's really important for people to both know that their data could be shared right now under HIPAA in most circumstances, but also to give permission for their explicit permission for their data to be shared.
So if I may, if Christine and Kathy could, I suggested subheads. I think a little subhead going beyond HIPAA or a little subhead like that with several paragraphs explaining the what and why of it would be great.
Okay.
Great, thank you. It's a really good one.
Just a parallel comment, but to emphasize what was just said there, I was just at HIMSS this week in Las Vegas, and there was a lot of discussion about information blocking regs or regs against information blocking. There were a lot of clinicians standing up talking about, what's good for the patient, and I don't want to be forced to disclose lab results without having a conversation first, et cetera. And it really just reminded me that what the government's interest in making sure that information is available or making sure that the patient has control over their information isn't always what providers think is best for the patient. But anyway, there's an inherent, in my view, conflict in here related to consent versus what implied consent and just be, availability of information to people that are treating a patient, et cetera. It's just, we could talk a lot about that, but it just deserves mention in here.
Yeah, great. Ed, a couple paragraphs saying that?
Yes, only just to note that I'm not an expert by any means, and perhaps the attorneys in our midst that would do a better job of that.
Well, if I may, on this point and others, just because you're not an expert on something, it doesn't mean you can't raise an important point. And if you type it up, then you've given the attorneys the content that they can look at, assess, and edit or leave. So this, it's a good way to involve people in the process. So don't worry.
Point taken, Adam.
To the points that are being made, I think we're talking about enablement. We're not talking about extremes. And there's got to be some guardrails on what we're doing. And I don't know how we best frame that. Because on one extreme, giving patients complete control over their information sounds like an ideal goal, but it's not.
Right.
I agree.
We all agree.
As a treating physician, I agree.
Yes, I'm sure you do.
On Facebook.
No, I'm sure you do. But so we need some sort of guidance and guardrails about what we're trying to do, and that is incredibly cumbersome going forward because we've got to be able to report, especially given all the cybersecurity issues we're all well aware of that don't need to be articulated. Right? We just don't want our personal, medical, clinical information out there so many people can hack it, if you will. So, I just think we need some proper framing, which is going to be a real challenging piece to write, Adam, even with the best intentions of our experts on the line.
Yeah.
Two quick questions. One is the role of TEFCA and the common agreement relative to Ed, your point you just made. And we have some folks from Sequoia going to talk in the next couple of weeks about that, because it seems to me that we also want to tie back to, while there may be subject matter experts on this call, we also, in terms of the integrity of the report or the relevance, is to also tie back to other initiatives like TEFCA, right? And does it even consider what we're talking about here, or is it still so healthcare focused in terms of a common agreement around HIPAA related kinds of things?
To my understanding, TEFCA will respect the consent given at source, and I think that'll be reinforced here when we hear from the Sequoia project.
Right, and I think Mary Ann said it's really between provider and payer and provider and other healthcare organizations as opposed to client level stuff. So that may or may not be a missing part of TEFCA or the common agreement at least. But again, just to recognize that there's a similar concept happening at the federal level is going to be really important, I think. And again, go back to ONC and Sam Meckler and other folks who are supporting the work.
Let me build on Dan's comment a little bit because of the guidance and guardrails. And I think it's a similar thing, that there's a recognized need and understanding that there has to be kind of some guidance and guardrails, that and that these need to be elaborated and they need to be presented and thought through. And I think that's one of the takeaways you get from this exercise.
Well, that's a very good learning. That's a very good piece of learning that we can put out and get people thinking about. So I'm going to move on to another section or two, see what we can get to. Again, just to orient you guys, because hopefully the bulk of the work will get done after this meeting.
Adam,
but yeah, please.
Can you address Rita's question in the chat? Because I have the same question.
Is this report opining on policy or just describing different consent approaches and underlying practices defined by policies like the answer is, and Daniel, please weigh in. but I don't know if it's going to be so much opining on policy as describing it and describing, what the opportunities are and obstacles are and how it's playing out. And, I think that it winds up opining, and in the findings and recommendations, and that's actually what I was going to talk about next, we can certainly weigh in on policy. If somebody here is an expert on X and wants to say that as a finding, the policy on, I'll say HIPAA, the X element of HIPAA is impeding the flow of information, even though that transfer would make a huge difference in children's lives. That could be a piece of learning if you're confident of it. So it could, and then the recommendation could be to change policy so that it enables whatever. So we can get at that, but I don't think the objective of the report per se is opining. It's described. Daniel?
Could I just suggest that we use as some kind of formatting mechanism or whatever to clearly differentiate between reporting and opining?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. If we couldn't say, okay, so this is what we found in our scan to be currently happening now. And based on that and review, we're thinking that moving forward in these directions would be helpful. You know what I mean? Something.
Yeah.
Just to keep it abundantly clear, because I think when I'm reading through this, and I'm just reading through it very quickly now for the first time, I was away last week, sorry. We're bouncing back and forth throughout this whole thing. And it's hard to tell what is and what are we suggesting.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is, in a sense, this is a document full of notes.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. I'm sorry if I sounded like I was throwing you under a bus. I didn't.
No. I'm fine.
I'm just throwing out a comment that as just quickly running through it, I think it'd be very helpful to say, define it very explicitly. This is what we found. This is what's currently happening. And most of it, like it or not, is in healthcare. But this is what we think needs to happen based on these findings, a natural progression of those findings to include additional non-healthcare sources to be able to share that data, as well as trying to help define some of the cultural issues we've seen in like you just said, the physicians not wanting to share data because they don't think the patient is ready for that, or et cetera.
I hear you. And as ever, I'll say, if you want to take a whack at writing a few paragraphs that delineate that, feel free. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
The reason why I put it in the comment, Adam, is because I've heard a lot of opinions on the call, and I would say to any opinion, there's probably an opposing opinion, including the one about physicians being uncomfortable about a person getting access to a test result, which I happen to disagree with because I have a very recent experience to explain why I'm really glad I got a test result in advance, because I didn't hear about it from the doctor until several days after. So, and it affected like things that had to happen like very quickly. But in any case, I just think it would help to be like really clear as to what this report is going to focus on. And even if we're just going to like present information relating, like framing, say, this is how HIPAA works right now with TPO, what I think what Dr. McCoy mentioned, these are the use cases where that is going to like vary, where consent would apply outside of HIPAA, whether it's like stuff that relates to 42 CFR Part 2 or exchanging data perhaps with like community-based providers or other things. So that's just my two.
Well, I think, again, an important point, and we should make it, and feel free to, put some of that down and frame it. But it's also, there will be inevitably a great deal of subjectivity here. I mean, one of our groups is promising practices. We're making a judgment. And we're making a judgment about the initiatives, the efforts that we highlight. So that doesn't diminish your point at all. It means our antennae need to be up. But inevitably, there's, this is why you have experts gathered, because inevitably there is going to be some subjectivity.
I would add one maybe clarifying point, maybe it's a question as well. you know, scans are scans, right? They're not, it's a
Right.
malleable term. Are you going a mile deep, you know, and an inch wide, or mile, whatever? But part of this is, and we've talked about this in terms of sort of presenting or providing some of the requirements for actually implementing this, right? So it's not just a scan to say, hey, here's what's out there. I hope somebody does something with it. We're actually doing this with the intention of learning what might be, you know, what are the watch outs? What are the cow patties we don't want to step in? What can we actually use to actually go do this in the Bronx and in Mammoth County and in, you know, wherever else it might be that we're going to just make this happen, right? So there's a pragmatic concreteness to it that we want to make sure we sharpen up that lens. That's my going into it, right? It's not just a, hey, we got this great, cool project to do a scan, let's do it. How does it inform and even the requirements to some degree, to a technical degree? So Ryan and the technical folks in the development team can actually build, you know, POC, even if it's with synthetic data, to show what realistically what could be doing. I don't know if there's agreement with that, or is that?
I think that's.
Everybody smiling? Yeah, good.
I mean, if it doesn't do that, then it's not very useful to the reader.
Exactly. It's not useful to RWJF. It's not useful to the Fed.
Right.
Not really useful unless we're going to say this is where we're going to use it.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I'm going to just breeze through the rest to set up what we're asking of you for the coming week and beyond. But I do want to say, because I alluded to it a moment ago, that in the email that we'll send to everyone, and Amanda's learning this as I say it right now, one of the things that we'll ask is if everybody could really think it through, and this really follows what Daniel said, because this helps people focus on what did we learn, what should we do. If everybody could come up with just one key learning based on your knowledge and experience, a piece and one recommendation. If everybody could come up with, we won't use everything because we'll have way too many but you know, if there's intersection among them, if there's insights among them, that would be really, really great. And they won't necessarily wind up in the learning or recommendation section. It might wind up within the body of the report. But if everybody could come up with one of each of those, that would be great.
You want us to add it directly into this, or you want that in a separate email?
You can add it directly in. Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, Amanda, I don't want to forget what you said to me earlier, which is everybody, please, please, please be careful of how you enter information so we know who entered it. Because if you don't, I'm not even sure. Amanda, you want to take the mic on that one? What should people do or not do?
Yeah, I don't even, so, I mean, we can turn on suggesting mode, which is this at the top. So we can see what's been added. But if you're not logged into an account, it still will just show up as anonymous. It won't show up as who actually did what.
Can you do that again though? Where did you pull down that menu for suggesting?
Yeah, so it's right here in the top corner.
Okay.
See that pencil, and it's
okay.
the middle one there.
Right.
And make sure you logged in so we know who it is, because otherwise it says you're a big roach or something.
Yeah, like see, I have anonymous dolphin. Anonymous. Yeah, so
but if you can log in through your Google account, right?
If you log in through your Google account, it'll say your name. So that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be great.
So Adam and Amanda, you will take stuff sort of outboard from the document, because the challenge with doing things this way, right, is I think you two would struggle. Am I commenting on the prose as written, or am I commenting on a comment? And therein lies the challenge of doing it this way. But if I send you an outboard document, either Word or an email with proper references to,
that's fine.
Okay, good.
That's absolutely fine. If people,
we just felt like Google Docs was lesser of two evils, trying to force you all to get into a SharePoint folder, and it's a pain in the ass. You know, Google Docs it's more effective. I've seen it be used more effectively like this than just SharePoint. So
yeah, and we'll see what happens.
It'll result in a Talmudic process.
Exactly.
You all,
Exactly.
just a small request, would you all mind doing the share with us directly? You could just probably copy all the email addresses and drop it in. That way it's in our drive.
Oh, great.
We use Google in Colorado, sorry, so I know all the tricks.
Yeah, you
but,
guys are the first state to adopt Google.
Wait,
right?
so I didn't understand what you're suggesting. Help me.
So that share button at the top,
Yeah.
well, you can go to the calendar invite and just copy all the email addresses just to have it ready. And then when you go in that share, it sends like an invite to edit, and then it makes it populate in our drive directly. And then we can find it without searching all kinds of places and having to
Yeah, instead of just emailing out the link.
And will that already set the permission, Jennifer, as suggestion mode?
You can control them. There have to be an editor. They have to, usually you can share as a commenter, a viewer, or an editor. In order to do suggesting, you have to give us edit rights. But if you're, so are you presenting right now, Adam?
No,
I can just walk you.
No, I am, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I can walk you through it super quick. If you just click on that blue button at the top, it's actually pretty user-friendly once you get used to it. So you can drop in all the email addresses up there. And then down at the bottom, you have change. Yeah. So there you can drop it. You have everybody as an editor. So
yeah. So it's just, I need to send it directly to
And
the
will-
email addresses.
And will their names show up as, will their comments show up associated with their names in this way?
if they're logged in, but this is where you give us
If they're logged
specific
in.
permission.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then if we go to it from our drive, then we are accessing with our account logged in.
And Amanda and Adam, were you saying that you want us to make our edits in suggestion mode? I don't recall the difference of how editor comments show up versus suggestion comments. I think editor comments, if you delete something because you want to replace it, it's going to put a line through the whole thing, which you may or may not want. So
If you edit, it just directly edits it. So if you put it in suggest mode, then folks can accept or reject it, and it keeps a track record. Well, they both do, I guess, but.
Which makes sense, yeah.
Okay, and I guess all those instructions we'll have to provide. All right, we're running out of time, so which is fine. I mean, this was exactly what we needed. Yeah, and we'll give more instruction in the email. Amanda, if you could just scroll down a little bit, there are just a couple more places I want to point out, and I'll try to keep to time. If you go down to the initiatives that we identified, there are, I don't know how many of them. Yeah, here we go. Brio, etc. One thing I'd love some guidance from folks on. Right now, these are in alphabetical order. So different types of projects, efforts are mixed up because they're just in alphabetical order. If anyone has a better idea of how to group them rather than alphabetical order, which ones belong together, that would be appreciated, because there might be more sense in grouping them a bit differently, or not, because it might get too complicated and there's some overlap in different areas, etc. But I'd love input on that. That would be great. And if you know something about, there's one rudimentary, rewrite off of websites and other places I looked, one rudimentary paragraph about each just to get started, and we will add to those. Amanda, actually, we'll have to do it via email. We have a new template to have apples and apples, so each of the initiatives has comparable, if not exactly the same kinds of descriptions. Go up higher. Oh, no, those are the new ones? Yeah. So we're hoping that these 6 questions can get answered for each project similarly, so that people can read each one and feel like they can understand how to compare them and what they do. We'll send that to you. We'll attach those as well. These are the questions we're asking, prospectively asking interviewees. We didn't ask them all before. We've regrouped. But if you know something about one of those projects that you think is important information for folks, readers to know, please insert it. And in addition, we'd like to get your input on grouping them. And now if you go just a little more, one more last thing, and I'm going to let everybody go.
Before you do that, I'm going to make a pitch for a very bulleted, tell us what you want with a page number reference email.
Well, we can do that, but it's going to be different places for different people because not everybody has the same expertise.
Well, there were a couple, you're right, but there were a couple of general things that you said, like you wanted each of us to do one key learning.
Yes, that will be in those will be in absolutely those will be in the emails. And just scroll down a little further and we'll wrap this up. Keep going. Okay, so what you'll see here is there's a section on legal considerations. So again, Chris and Jennifer are going to fill that out with some writing this week. And technical, the next place is Brian and Jennifer and their team. But we need pros as well as the bullets that are there and the little sections that were there. But everyone who, on the call who has some legal knowledge or technical, please put it in there. I think the best practices, promising practices are really the initiatives. So the team leaders and the teams working on the promising practices, think about how they fit maybe in a prelude to introducing the 6, or it's more than that, introducing the initiatives, or does some of it get sprinkled throughout? But think about that, or whether you want a section, but what it means to have promising practices, what are the elements of promising practices? How do we frame that team's insights and knowledge? And with that, I think that gives you a lay of the land. Any questions before we wrap up?
Where are the initiatives you're talking about?
Those are right there. CRISP and Brio, and here we go.
So the different things that we're
interviewing. Yeah, we're trying to interview somebody from each of the initiatives, but that's not all the information about them is going to come from the interviews.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, Adam, can you stick around 60 seconds after class?
I can stay longer.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I just very grateful for whatever you can produce in the next week or so. And if you have any questions or want a hand, I'm absolutely happy to be there for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Have
putting
a
this all
very
together.
good weekend. Have a very good weekend.
Okay.